Yo, what up YouTube? So today I'm going to be replacing the Z's power steering rack. Picked this Johnny up from Z1. They do offer a rebuild service. This one's looking super nice. So also to go along with that, I've got some solid steering rack bushings from GKtech. Shout out Dan for shipping this out. Also doing this speed sensitive delete fitting, so I'll show you guys how to go about doing that. So right here I am displaying a little bit of suspension play. I was hoping replacing the rack would get rid of some of this movement, but unfortunately it did not. I do have a fix for that coming up in future videos. So I guess now I got a spare rack, and that's cool either way. Here is the rebuilt rack from Z1. They do say it's centered when you get it from them, but it was not. So I had to take off the outer boots and confirm that with a digital caliper that it was centered, and take measurements of what my rack is centered in my car, and continue from there. So here also removing inner tie rods. These were on there really tight. They used some sort of thread lock on them, so it was definitely a pain in the butt to get loose. But you do want to use well, I used a 15/16 to keep the rack centered while I was torquing down on it, so I wasn't hurting it. Make sure you take off the rings there. Those, if you want to get your rack rebuilt, they will require those little plastic rings on the outside. Here you can see I actually had to use like an extension on the second one. Yeah, it was bad, man. It was really, really tight. So and here we have the power steering. It's a little solenoid that basically determines how strong your power steering is depending on how fast you're going. Unfortunately, I believe I broke mine. I kept spinning the outside of the canister here, not realizing it wasn't actually being loosened. So that's when my brother pulls up, and he comes up with a brilliant idea to take a couple of bolts here, and you cut them short, and we laid them in between the housing of the rack and the Coke can there, and we were able to break it loose with a set of vice grips. So that was pretty sweet. So the GKtech steering sensitive delete that comes with 2 O-rings. Gonna lube those up with some power steering fluid. Just gonna go ahead and lube those up and get them nice and power steered fluidy. So this is where this guy's going. Just make sure you put power steering fluid on there. Make sure it's nice and lubed up. I should probably see what size this is, but it does have a torque value. I need a torque too. Alright, so now we're taking out the stock steering rack bushings. These can be broken loose with a nice set of pliers. Just twist them loose and break the seal, and then you can kind of just rock them back and forth and take them out. These are, probably one of the easier bushings that you're going to remove, so not too hard. Like, it's just rubber on apparently metal. This is super light, so it just feels like crap. I don't know. Alright, so I just got all the bushing material out with a started with a file, and then I moved over to a Dremel. That was the way to go. So got the excess material out, and now we can move on over to the press and press in the solid bushings. So I got rid of most of the material here. Turns out I don't need to use a press. It's a slip fit. If you guys don't take off all of the rubber bushing, it will, press fit. But what I'm going to do is just put some grease in there, similar to this grease, and that will take up, any sort of slop that's in there. And just put in some good amount of grease in there. Should be good to go with any slop that we might have. Alright, so I'm just doubling back and making sure to torque this fitting down. GKtech says about 35 through 50, so I'm going to do 45 foot-pounds. This is a 17 mil. So okay. There it goes. There it goes. Alright. Cool. That is done. So, it is the next day actually, so I'm just gonna basically start on getting the old rack out of the Z, and yeah, we'll get started on that. I also do have a power steering cooler on this car, so I'm gonna probably be taking the front bumper off, taking the power steering cooler off and draining that as well, and gonna refill that up with fresh fluids. So a little bit of an added step, but just gonna be switching over to some different fluids. So. All right, so now we're just taking off the front bumper, just starting by removing all of the clips on the top side here with a flathead screwdriver. If you don't have a trim removal set. And then I've got the Z1 under tray, so I gotta zap off these johnnies down here, and should be good to remove the bumper. Okay, and we have the power steering cooler here. So basically I gotta take this off, and I want to drain it, and basically gonna be disconnecting, probably just disconnecting the lines from this end here, draping the lines, although I see a hard line here, so I'm gonna get as much fluid out of the lines as I can and get as much fluid out of this as I can. But yeah, that's one of the next steps. It doesn't have to be the next step, but it's got to be done. So. Alright, so I took the power steering cooler off the car to get better access to these nuts, because I cannot get the hose off of the barb here. So my plan is to hopefully not get much power steering fluid on myself, although it's already leaking out. Alright, so we're just taking these lines off and draining them into a pan here. Making sure also to drain some of this fluid over a paper towel to check for any sort of particulate that comes out. We just want to make sure we don't need to replace our power steering pump as well. Everything's good, checks out, so we're good to put the new rack in. Alright, so we've got the power steering cooler lines draining into a pan right now. The oil or power steering cooler is empty, So I'm just gonna make sure it's empty, leave it on its side, drain it, and basically just gotta fill this up with the new power steering fluid once I get the new rack in. This is gonna be dripping for quite a while. But we're gonna leave those lines disconnected. If we come up top, this is most likely empty now. And it is. So. And right now I'm just steering the car left and right, trying to get any excess fluid out of the system that I can. So when I drop the rack, it's not, you know, pouring all over me. And as well, we're going to go ahead and take off our offset rack spacers from the rack. I only showed doing this on one side, just to save time in the video. But we're going to start off with that, and then we can remove the under tray here that covers the rack itself, or at least the rack brace. And right here, we're just undoing the electrical connector for this speed-sensitive steering solenoid Coke can thingamabobber. Good to go. Alright, well, this wire had another clip on it. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I had to clip it off, so yeah, that was annoying. And also, this here just kind of slides off of this plastic here, so yeah, good to go. Alright, so next step, we can undo our steering shaft so that the rack has a nice time coming down from the car. Get that undone, and then we can go under the car. We'll zap these two middle bolts down. The outside bolts, you have to use a wrench from up top to keep it from spinning to undo those. I believe it's a 19 up top and then a 17 on the bottom. And yeah, just get those loose for now. Kind of want to get them finger tight. Alright, so I don't know how I'm doing on voiceovers and shit, but these two inside bolts, you kind of want to leave these in just for security purposes while you undo these, but kind of want to like leave both of them thread in, at least the outside two. The outside two are what connect to the rack. Alright, so I'm just getting the outside bolts finger tight. Okay, so I've got as much play out of the outside bolts as I possibly can get, which is kind of what you want right now. Still can kind of keep these in. We're gonna disconnect the lines first, and then we can take the rack out. So right now we need to undo this here, this hard line. Yep, so as I said, we're undoing the hard line here. This came loose so much easier than I was expecting it to. New England usually throws us curveballs, but yeah, not this time. After that gets loose, we gotta take this clamp off of that soft line and slide that off of the barb completely, and then, take off the soft line. Now I've gotta try to get this line off of this barb. I'm not really looking forward to that. And best strategy here for me was using a flathead screwdriver to kind of get that first separation, and then I was able to kind of pull from the back end and she came loose. All right, so got the soft line off. Yeah, that was a bitch trying to get that soft line off that barb. This hard line's off. I just gotta basically lower the rack out, and right now everything's, you know, ready to go. So, and we are basically at the part we've been waiting for. Get this rack out of here. Just undoing all the bolts. Looking back at this, I would have definitely tried to get that hard line off before doing this, but it really wasn't that big of an issue. As you can see, I actually get it off right about now. So the real issue for me was the steering shaft got stuck, and yeah, you'll see that in the next clip, but that was definitely a pain in the butt. All right, well, I had to run out and grab some PB Blaster because I didn't have any penetrating fluid. So my steering shaft is bound up on the U-joint right now. I got the power steering rack jacked up with a hand jack stand, but I'm going to spray some of this nonsense on here. So I got it out. This was a bit of a dingus. So this was rusted onto my steering shaft, so I had to take like a steel punch and kind of jam this a little bit more open, and after that it just kind of came out. And so now I gotta swap this whole U-joint assembly over, and I believe this plastic bushing as well. That gets swapped over to the new rack. So new rack needs that bushing and the U-joint. Once we get that on, we are good to put that in the car. So, and then also we need to snag this fitting right here, and then we'll also put that on the new rack. Alright, so now I'm getting set up to get this U-joint off. Just remove that steering shaft bolt there attached to the rack. This is the punch I use to separate the U-joint off of the steering shaft. So I'm doing a similar thing here with the rack because it also does not want to come off. So this is a bit of a pain, but using a very small hammer, light taps to kind of spread that open and kind of break that seal, spraying the penetrated fluid in there, and then also going to be coming at it at another direction in the next flip to kind of just punch it off completely. So this is New England for you, just throws you all kinds of curveballs. Rust is like public enemy number one, if you want to call it that. But yeah, basically got this off now, and I'm just gonna swap it over to the new rack. Alright, so marinating my O-ring, fresh O-ring from Z1. they give you O-rings for the blah 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 blah. I don't know. I think this is the, well, this is the soft line going to it, so I think this is the return. Who knows? But we're putting this on. I cleaned this up, and I'm gonna put it on that end, and then we'll thread it into the new rack. Alright, so this has got nice fresh power steering fluid on the O-ring there. Going to thread this in. Probably only going to do this, I'm actually not sure if I can even get a torque wrench on this, but I'm not going to do this up too tight because it's, you know, it's an O-ring, so an O-ring seal. Thinking that's pretty good. I might check it, see if I can fit a deep socket. It's a 17 millimeter. There's a block off here. We'll keep that in until we're ready to put the hard line in. So we'll just leave that in right now. So we're good to go on the next step here. All right, so just got some anti-seize on there, lined up the mark here. I made a mark because I centered this rack with the bushing, and then the bushing with the collar here. Then you can slip your bolt in, and it should be good to go back in the car. I still got to torque this down, probably in between 35 and like 45 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm going to do with that. But yeah. All right, so we gotta get in to there and take this O-ring off of the hard line. It needs to be replaced. So we're gonna take that off, this little guy, and Z1 does give you a fresh O-ring to put in there, so I'm gonna lube it up with some power steering fluid and slap that on to the hard line. This nice and lubed up, gonna put a new O-ring onto that hard line. New O-ring is installed. I'm just gonna seat it down to the rib at the back, and should be good to put the rack in here. So I forgot to put this on first, the brace underneath here, so make sure you get that on. So when I get this on, I'm gonna get the inside bolts on, just finger tight. We're gonna keep this nice and loose for now. All right, so just sliding on this soft line here and getting that clip back up over. Pretty good clearance here for needle nose, so it's definitely the best tool to use for this. And now we can try to get this hard line. And it looks like it's going in. Yeah, so you want to keep that nice and loose. That is a 12 mil if I can find it. And now we're just getting our steering shaft all lined up with the U-joint here. Takes a few tries, at least for me. Pretty rusty, so but we got it on. So I got everything on, like slipped on into the right place. I just got to put the 2 bolts in the steering shaft. Yeah, should be good. Okay, so steering shaft is aligned. Gonna start doing these brace bolts in. Now we can start with torquing these inner bolts for the brace. Those are 69 foot-pounds. Okay, and then the outer are 75. Alright, so filled the power steering cooler back up, bolted it back on, got the lines back on. So now I'm just coming around. Last thing I got to do now is reattach my offset rack spacers. So before I do that, I kind of want to clean up just a little bit of stuff off of them. So now it's time to get our rack offset spacers back into our rack. When you're doing these up, you want to make sure there's two teeth that you got to line up with the rack. There's two notches in the rack that have to line up. If you don't line them up properly, they can break off, so just make sure you are lined up 100% of the time going into it. Also, make sure you use some sort of thread lock on these. I personally use red, so they don't back out, because they do have a tendency to do that. After that, we can put on our under tray, and we're pretty much good to go to put in more fluid. Alright, and it's finally time to fill up the system. It's been a long job, but basically we're just filling up this reservoir up to, don't fill it up past the maximum line. And once that's done, we're going to go to the car with it off, turn it on so you can steer it, but don't start it, and start cycling fluid through. Keep doubling back, checking the levels, and that's it. Start it, and just keep checking levels after that, and it's good to go. All right, hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was kind of a long job, but it was definitely worth it. It didn't fix the play in the steering system that I was hoping it would, but that led me to something else now that I'm going to be fixing in our next video, hopefully. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Basically going to be replacing spherical bearings in the GKtech LCAs that I bought. And yeah, so now I got a spare rack. If shit hits the fan, that's cool. If you guys like the video, please comment, rate, or subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a nice night, day, wherever you are. Peace out.